from the government side, we regret the decline in the popularity of the ideology of communism. That is a world where nobody considers about how good communism, when we have a discourse about what kind of economic policies we should have, nobody supports the ideology itself. We believe that state communism is something that it's what we support and what we want to raise the popularity of is the ideology of communism, right? The ideology which claims that states should control the means of production and what the goal is to achieve equality between poor and rich. And we think that what we are supporting is not the type of communism that had failed in Soviet Union, right? We're not saying that we should do the same thing in the exactly same situation where Soviet Union had, but we think what we are supporting is the ideal goals or ideal mechanism of communism itself. And we think what the opposition side has to support today is that how good a discourse is with the absence of the ideology of communism itself. And we're going to assume that opposition is going to support a world where they say that capitalism is much better, right? And we think that capitalism is where we believe and assume that the market is going to function perfectly. And we think that rather than that, we believe from the government side that both the ideologies are imperfect, but both ideologies have benefits as well. And we think in that state, in that situation, we think both ideas should be considered in a discourse, and that is why we think that communism should be treated equally or should have the equal amount of support when having a discourse. And that is why we are very proud to propose. I'm going to talk about three things in my speech. Wait a minute, please. First of all, I'm going to talk about the context of this debate, how there's excessive support of capitalism or other ideologies than communism, and how that is bad. And second of all, I'm going to talk about how communism actually had good aspects. It's not perfectly bad in all cases. And third of all, I'm going to talk about, in that type of situation, how it's good to have both the ideologies considered in a discourse. And before moving on, I would like to take a few right now. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to clarify the context of this debate. How we believe that in the current situation where there's an excessive decline of the support of communism, what we have is a greater majority supporting capitalism. And we think that this is because, first of all, we have many cases where communism failed, right? That might be about Soviet Union, etc. And the media or the academics illustrate it as absolutely evil. And we think people in the current society assume that it's bad, and they don't have an incentive to actually consider that ideology because they know that so many people suffered from Soviet Union. And second of all, we think it is declining because nobody teaches it in universities or teaches it in schools, right? Because of these things happening. We think that as a result, the opposing ideology, which is capitalism, is actually being excessively supported in the current situation. A lot of people teach capitalism, a lot of people look into capitalism when they are thinking about economic policies. We think this is harmful. No, thank you. First of all, because we believe that capitalism is imperfect, right? Yes.
Are you able to describe your ideal communist state?
Yes. We think that that can be made. We think we have a lot of books that state how capitalism should work and what kind of conditions communism and capitalism works, and we think that can be achieved. So let me go back to my point. So first of all, we believe that an excessive support of capitalism is bad because capitalism is imperfect. Capitalism works on the assumption that competition can be fairly made in every situation. Everybody can fairly participate in competition, and competition always leads to good results. We think this is untrue, right? Some people just happen to be born in particular races which happen to be discriminated in particular societies. Those people can't fairly join the competition. Those people stay poor, right? We think in that society where competition doesn't always achieve the best benefits in every single society, we think it is imperfect. And that is why we think it is harmful in societies where, for example, poverty that cannot be solved by a person's effort is harmful, right? Because it harms the mindset of a person. People who support capitalism believe that their poverty can be justified because they are losers who could not compete fairly in competitions. And we think as a result, people lack the incentive to actually think of policies that actually solve these poor situations or solve poor problems because they think that they're just losers that fail the competition. We think that is harmful, and we think that is why the excessive support of capitalism is bad. Yes.
So even though there are capitalism in our nations, it doesn't mean that we are going to abandon all kinds of people. Why this is such essentially supporting?
What we are saying is that when you have massive supporters of capitalism, at the same time, nobody is supporting communism, right? And we think that's a clear state. That's just a fact in the society, as I have already told you. So second of all, we think that communism has good aspects. We think that yes, the Soviet Union failed, but that was probably because the government was really evil, they wanted to continuously exploit their own people, and they were just really selfish, right? We think doesn't happen in all situations. We have good governments who actually care about people, and we think that the goal of communism itself isn't really evil, right? It wants to achieve the equality between both the poor and the rich, and we think that is not arbitrarily evil. No, thank you. So we think that there will be conditions where communism may succeed, and we think that the goal of communism itself is good. So just because it failed in the Soviet Union there is no reason to ban that at all, or to say that that is bad in all situations. So we think that as long as communism has good aspects, it should be included in discourse when we consider about economic policies, etc. And therefore, so let me go into my third point, how both ideas should be included in the discourse. So what I've proven throughout my speech was that first, capitalism is not perfect at all situations, and second, communism is not absolutely bad. So we recognize both benefits and harms of both ideologies. We think that both of these ideas should be included in a discourse, and we think that can only happen when both parties have the same amount of popularity, right? We think that the number of people who represent that idea is extremely important when it comes to discourse, because simply when there's excessive decrease of support, there's nobody to actually represent that idea. And moreover, we think that popularity is extremely important, because when you have a lot of people who are supporting that idea, that necessarily raises the credibility, that necessarily raises the number of people who actually teach that idea, that necessarily expands the number of books or academics which are published based on these ideas. So we think more people would be exposed to these ideas and actually create the incentive to actually listen into these discourses or these ideas. And we think that it will lead to better situations where we actually have the capability to actually doubt the failures of capitalism, or assume the good parts of communism. So when both ideas are imperfect, and when we have to make an important discussion, we think both ideas should be included. And that's why we're very powerful.
I thank the Prime Minister. Next, I'd like to call upon the leader of the opposition, Ken Kuroki, to deliver a speech within 7 minutes. Here again.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. So, Prime Minister did not support communist state. Nonetheless, she said, as counter idea, we need communism so that capitalism does not gain too much power. We think they failed to prove to us why it necessarily has to be communism to counter to the idea of radical capitalism in the first place. This is actually the first piece of debate. So, in their paradigm, they say, in our paradigm, all people are too radical libertarian who does not support any kind of social welfare or are just cut off poor people or who are disabled, etc. We don't think so at all, because even between capitalist idea, some people has more kind of communitarian idea to protect poor people or to protect disabled people. We do not need communist idea to achieve that goal. Look at Northern Europe. They have a lot of welfare, however, they are not communist in the first place at all. Therefore, the necessity as counter idea of capitalism cannot stand in the first place at all. And secondly, the second problem with her case is that they are only talking about the theoretical idea of communism, not really talking about the real social structure of nations. They have to support popularity of communism. But it means if that has popularity, then it's highly likely that some states actually adopt that system of communism. However, here's the problem, because she said she didn't support the system of Soviet Union without telling us any kind of alternative image of ideal communist state. As a result, we think the harm of adopting communist idea to the nation also happens necessarily if we take their partner in the first place. So, having debated to our opening comment, let's deal with two things. So firstly, I'll talk
Sir?
about. I'm sorry. I'll talk about why, in the first place, popularity of communism decreased in modern society and how it's good. So secondly, I'll talk about, especially in global scale, having popularity of communism is so dangerous and how it harms people in the first place. So on to the first issue about why popularity of communism declined in recent era. So we think, in the first place, communism is just a counter idea happened in the era of Industrial Revolution. At that era, laborers are just abused, and as a result, they had antipathy toward the government on capitalistic system, and they needed the idea of public ownership of means of production, and they denied that people with wealth and people owning private means of production. We think that necessity of communism idea as counter idea to our capitalism is already lost in recent era. Why is that? Firstly, because that recent capitalist society succeeded to improve the living standard of the people, while communist state totally failed to do so in the first place. The capitalist state recently succeeded to improve the situation of people, especially having much more trade in recent era. People have access to various commodities in recent era, and as a result, they have less necessity to support communist idea. But secondly, also the exploitation of labor, which is original reason to have communist idea, is also reduced in the recent era. Why is that? It's because at the era of industrial evolution, we had no idea of human rights. We had no idea of vote open for everybody. But only some people with much money can vote toward the policy, and we could not criticize human abuse in the first place. However, in today's society, if companies abuse laborers, then there will be massive criticism to that company, and as a result, that company cannot continue the business. Why is that? Because now all people recognize that everybody must have a human right and must not be abused in the first place. And the democratic system also allows everybody to vote, so that society can adopt necessary welfare policy or necessary labor regulation or etc. Furthermore, we say in recent era especially, we have much access to information what's going on in the society. As a result, we can realize and we can criticize and we can also say opinion on the internet to change the society by using Twitter or Facebook. On this occasion, we think the original meaning of communism as counter idea is now lost, and the loss of community support to our communism is natural change of the society, and there's nothing wrong with that. Just adaptation of current situation. We think. Yes, Austin.
So thank you for your history lecture, but you have to support why no one, considering no one supports the situations as a communism situation. Why such kind of situation is better? We are not denying the capitalism as a first.
If we have the popularity of communism, this kind of achievement of our society is much great, and efficient economic system is hindered. That's why we support and we do not regret the decline of popularity of communism in the first place. So, especially in global scale, why is it especially harmful to have popularity of communism? As I already told you, that popularity, then some countries would adapt the communist system to our entire government policy. As a result, we think this causes tension in global scale. Because communism is just to share means of production of wealth within domestic scale, not with other countries. As a result, we saw tension not only between capitalist state, but also between communist state, like between Vietnam and China and Soviet in the last century. We think this kind of tension is so harmful and can endanger people's life. But on the other hand, capitalism can achieve the integration of the world because it supports the global trade or regional trade across the border of states. Let's take an example of EU. EU can succeedingly integrating economy and labor or even political system. Because they no longer want to dominate the wealth only within domestic nations, like in Poland, but now they are willing to open up the market to share with everybody by having much trade. We think this situation is much better to protect people on the ground. So for this reason, we are so proud to support it.
Thank the leader of the opposition. Next, I'd like to call on the Deputy Prime Minister, Koki Sasaki, to continue the case of opening government. Here.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, today's opposition totally forget about what is the assumption the capitalism based on. The capitalism system based on, if you earn money, that is yours. So, because you work, so that's fine. And also they talk about the competition. The competition creates a better situation because we can fairly compete. And the competition creates the vitality of the economy, and that is solving everything, the innovation solving everything. Of course, we are not denying. I think to some extent that is an important idea, and actually current society made it by these kind of things. But the thing is, it's not the perfect one. As my partner already told you, the perfect competition doesn't happen, and fair competition doesn't happen. And if someone accumulates money, and someone cannot accumulate money, actually the disparity or unfairness between these kinds of two people always exists. And Mr. Speaker, of course, we are not totally supporting the communism. The assumption of the communism is also, it is not the perfect. The Communism Party think the government can control everything, and government is very fair, and government is very friendly for everyone. I think it is not good. I think it is not the perfect things. But the thing is, behind this idea, the communism and capitalism, the capitalism support the vitality or competition, or the people's greedy, the people's desire to achieve more and more. I think it is better, or I think it is also important. And communism support, behind their idea, we are the same person. And even if you earn a lot of money, or even if you are capable, we should not discriminate, or we should not differentiate two persons, because as long as we are human, or as long as even if you earn money, such kinds of money is also coming from the society, and it's not totally on you, and every people should help each other. I think, Mr. Speaker, both capitalism and communism fail to prove their idea, or their ideal ideology, or their ideal society is better, as long as both sides fail to prove this kind of situation. So we have to take the balance, and we have to get or receive the good part good part from both sides. But that is the world we are supporting. And opposition totally forget, we are not denying the capitalism. They have to deny communism. They have to deny all communism, or they have to deny the ideology which is supporting the equality. So this is a burden today's opposition have, and today's opposition totally fail to say such kind of things. Yes.
So what kind of discourse do you expect on your side? If interests are uncompromising, it's a negotiable dialogue in a political system.
Yeah, I will explain these kinds of things. So under the current situation, what kinds of things happen? So before that, they have to support capitalism. I think that is their right, because he didn't deny these kind of things, and maybe they will follow these kind of things. And if you're considering about the capitalism, I think it is not a perfect thing, because they purely believe invisible hand change everything. I think how it is effective, or how it is change everything. I think also the communism idea is not so perfect, but I think the assumption which these kinds of capitalism have is also very uncertain, and it's a very bad thing. But the uniqueness of the capitalism is allow people to have the money, and if you earn money, that is your money, and such kinds of money you can utilize as you wish. That is a basic and pure idea of the capitalism at the first place. So therefore, they are supporting. No, thank you. So possessing something, they justify these kind of things. But if you're considering the situation under the current situation, if you possess something, or if you try to possess something, such kind of desire necessarily create the kicking out the other person, or we have to win other person. I think these kinds kinds of vitality, or I think this kind of desire itself is beneficial, as all told you. But the thing is, I think just only people think about this kind of situation is very bad for some situations. For example, like the subprime loan. Actually, the subprime crisis, actually it is coming from that they can earn money. We are very happy to earn money, and no one stopped it, and finally many persons suffer. Or maybe the discourse for the social welfare or towards social welfare or Obamacare. So every person believes if you earn money, that is your money, and there is no necessity to pay back for these kind of things. But the thing is, some people considering, or some people believe the communism idea is also right, I think we can take the balance between the people who can earn money, and sometimes people have to help these kinds of things. And the communitarian idea, or sometimes the other things, is also important. But the thing is, the communitarian idea is also supporting that to some extent individual have to pay back for the society. And the basic idea, or basic knowledge, or basic principle of this kind of communitarian idea is they somehow try to deny the possession of the money or possession of the wealth. And we see such kinds of idea entirely coming from these kinds of communism, and so therefore we are regretting the decline of the popularity of the communism closing.
We are not here to defend unfettered capitalism, like a subprime loan or a completely unregulated market which discriminates people on the basis of color skin. You are also imposing unnecessary burden on this side of the house. You need to realistically approach the current context of capitalist government.
I don't think so, because the motion said this is a very, I forget the motion, but the less popularity of these kind of things. And we define these kind of things. I don't think this is not unfair, because we say we want to balance up, and you have to support everyone hates the communism, or everyone don't think about the communism. I think that is what motion said, and please do it. Yeah, that's all. So anyway, Mr. Speaker, and more we say, the point of information coming from the Thomas is about please show us the ideal system of the communism. I can't. So therefore, the communism cannot conquer the world. But the thing is, the ideal ideology or ideal purpose of the communism is the equality and helping each other, and that everyone should be equal. Because if there is an inequality exists, actually someone unhappy and someone extremely happy. I think this kind of idea itself is a very good, because no one wants to be unhappy, and I think it's a very good thing. And more we say, the important things, as I already told you, is the possession of the wealth. And as long as you possess something, it creates a desire, and it creates a competition, and it creates the unhappy person. And we say, I think we should possess something, but it is not a natural right for you. And right of the property is not a natural right, and sometimes you have to release these kinds of right, and to ensure these kinds of balance of the situation, we are regretting such kind of situation. So thank you.
I stand to the Deputy Prime Minister. Next, I'd like to call upon the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, Hitomi Takai, to continue the case from the opposition.
Speaker, government side somehow supporting only the ideal, the theoretical logic of what the communists are. But what they have to support, and in order to debate this, here, is that they have to support the concept which exists in the 1990s because that's the concept which was declined from now to begin with. Right? But even though, Mr. Speaker, they're supporting the ideology of the communism itself, we believe that in terms of the discourses, the communism in itself is not beneficial to begin with. So I'm going to tell you two things in this debate. Firstly, what's the communism what we are talking about? Because that was kind of unclear in the opening government side. Because they somehow believe that the communism is something that could help everyone. We say that's not true. But more than that, Mr. Speaker, we are going to tell you why having communism in itself, which is the concept
opening government. They never engaged my partner's point. What's the reason why? What's the reason behind the decline of the communism begins? My partner told you two things happened in the status quo, because the reason why the concept of communism emerged in our society is when the 15th century, the Industrial Revolution happened, right? When people are exploited by the money, exploited by the capitalism, or when there are an unfair gap between the people who have money and people who doesn't have money. So the reason why those kind of ideology decline under the status quo is because those kind of unfair gap diminish and those kind of things. And that's something we have to support for. No, thank you. And more than that, Mr. Speaker, if you think about the concept of communism, we believe now there are alternative concepts that exist, like human rights or those kind of things, or the communitarian ideology. We see that's much beneficial, because that can tell you the real reasons why we have to protect people, not just saying the capitalism total are bad and those kind of things. But secondly, my partner told you, no, thank you, the reason behind, the context behind those kind of decline of the communism in itself is the globalizations, right? Because what the communism does, the communism only focusing on the domestic issue, like, to solve the unfair gap between the countries within the domestic citizens. But because we open our eyes to the global world, maybe there's no necessity to think about it. Make excellent solution to the country in itself. No, thank you. So let's move to the first argument. What the communism are? They somehow believe the communism, the concept that helps everyone, right? But Mr. Speaker, can you name any country that succeeded by believing the communism? No, right? Because the communism concept, which is going to, no, thank you, enable people to put the effort toward those kind of things, and those, put the effort, or enable people to have the incentive to work harder and those kind of things. So maybe the communism itself is a wrong concept, or that's something harmful concept to maintain the capitalism to begin with. No, thank you. But secondly, they somehow believe that the communism could include any people. That's the most inclusive concept to begin with. That's not true, because the communism only thinks the only people who are valuable is the people who are productive. That is why you see in Russia, the disabled people are discriminated, or the women and those kind of people are discriminated because they are not productive to begin with. In that sense, Mr. Speaker, the communists are not the inclusive concept, but that concept of the human lives, or the concept of the communitarian concept is much more inclusive because we respect the human lives of the people. No, thank you. But more than that, Mr. Speaker, we believe the communist is the concept which puts the older burden of the failure of the society to the capitalists, right? So because what the communists are saying is that because we fail, or because there are unfair gap exists, it's because there are capitalism exists. We have to break those kind of things. We will this enable society or enable individual to calculate what the real problems of the those kind of unfair gaps are, right? Because the real problem is that discriminatory idea, or the real problem is that unfair opportunity provided to the individual, not the reason why the communists exist, capitalism exists to begin with, right? So which means that Mr. Speaker, by dominant discourse or ideology of the communism itself is something totally against the capitalism, which doesn't enable them to negotiate, which doesn't enable them to cooperate with together and those kind of things. But Mr. Speaker, you think about the ideology of human lives. If you think about the ideology of the communitarian concept, which enable to coexist with the capitalism idea to begin with, that's more beneficial, right? Because that could cooperate with the capitalism idea, and that could tackle the real problem, which is like ideology of discrimination, ideology of inferiority between the races, ideology that the people doesn't deserve the same opportunity, and those kind of things. So we are going to tell you, we told you how the communism is a concept which brands people for the real problem issues, but put the old burden to the capitalism to begin with. That's why in order to make the discourse better, we believe that even the communism should decline to begin with, and people realize that the communism in itself is that not beneficial concept, but rather harmful concept is a good thing to begin with. Yes, Claude?
Because people are already accustomed to the idea of capitalism, people easily dismiss it, even though there's good communism ideas, and that word can be moved to the next spectrum. Don't you think it's bad?
Okay, say again.
Because people are already accustomed to the capitalistic ideas, they can easily dismiss communitarian ideas, even though it is good.
Mr. Speaker, if the capitalism goes too far, and the capitalism is going to abandon every single people, we will are going to discussion, and we will under the status quo already, the human lives can coexist with the concept of human lives can coexist with the capitalism idea. What's wrong with it? Why only the exclusive communist idea should be on the discussion to begin with? So, no, thank you. Why the communism is so wrong in terms of creating the discussion? We told you how the communism in never going to be cooperated or never going to be combined. But if you think about the other concept of human rights, other concept of a communitarian ideology, maybe those kind of things can cooperate with the ideology of the capitalism. So maybe the communism should disappear, and that's why we're proud standard proposition.
I thank the deputy leader of the opposition. Next, I'd like to call upon a member of the government, Nico Hirasawa, to start a case from closing up.
So, thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, opening government will talk about how the capitalism is totally an evil and how communism is a good ideology. So, as a closing government, we would like to prove to you two things. Firstly, we would like to prove to you why having communism as independent ideology, not saying like leftist idea, but having communism is critically important. Second of all, I'd like to talk about why having this communism idea in the modern world where we have lots of problems to solve together, like environmental issues or issues about debt crisis, where we need cooperation as a nation, is critically important. But before moving on, a couple of battles against the opening opposition. So firstly, the opening opposition said like how the communism is an old-fashioned idea by saying that how the human rights have already fulfilled in the status quo. But we think that kind of status quo recognition is totally wrong because we see exploitation as an ongoing problem in the status quo. We see, for example, poor mother dying in the streets in, for example, the African countries, where we see like poor children have to pick up cacaos every day, every night, and having like bending their neck and having extremely difficulty to live in the first place. We think that therefore this exploitation is an ongoing problem, and all the rebuttals are now included in my speech. So talking about the first one, no, thank you. So firstly, why communism having an independent idea is crucially important. So opening opposition gave us a lot of alternatives about how communitarian idea or idea of human rights issue is so much important. Yes, we agree. We're more than happy to have those ideas as well. But the problem here is that because of the stigma towards communism, we think that support towards this ideology, ideology as communitarian ideology, having like ideology as a big government, is totally denied in the status quo. We heard why is that so? Because for example, we see because when we say communism, this idea is always associated with the failure of USSR in the past. And the politicians always use this rhetoric to accuse people who claim the big government issue. Obama is always called as a communist in the United States in the status quo. That is the very reason why this Tea Party or this kind of right-wing party is able to empower themselves by trying to associate this leftist idea with this negative image of the history in the first place. Therefore, we think their alternative doesn't stand as well. And so, why is having an independent is so much important? Moving on to the second reason. So we think that the problem in the status quo is that people take it for granted for the fact that having money is the biggest happiness in the status quo. And no one even doubts this. Even the Democratic Party in the United States don't doubt these kind of things. And people haven't internalized it by seeing media, for example, advertising how good to have luxury lives, how cool it is to have good cars and so forth. And we try to, for example, provide these people and in the status quo. And we think that therefore, we think that that's the status quo problem. And certainly we think the problem here is that when we have like these kind of leftist idea, people who propagate these kind of human rights issues, as a same spectrum as a capitalism, we think that problem is going to occur. So the opening opposition said like how lack of cooperation between communism and the capitalism is the problem. But we are more than happy to support that lack of cooperation because we think that concession within the capitalism, the spectrum, decrease of spectrum is the exact problem what we are facing in the status quo. Why is that? Because people who even support the human rights issue in the status quo are also operating under this system called capitalism. Even the Democratic Party in the United States are getting lobbying. They have to support the CEO of the company because their funding is coming from these people as well. Therefore, we think that is the status quo problem. And why is this so harmful? Two reasons. Firstly, because we think we are limiting the choices of the individual, the choices of ideology to subscribe to in the first place. Because people don't even notice that this assumption that having money is the crucial, most eternal happiness is not necessarily true. They don't even doubt these kind of things. And second of all, we think the greatest unhappiness is brought about in the status quo because when people cannot have this kind of luxury life, people will feel extremely unhappy. You feel
society. So that's the very reason why Japan, which is the victim of this kind of overwhelming capitalism, we see a lot of suicide occurring because of the lack of money in the status quo. And moreover, as a society, it's really, really bad because we think that this kind of stigma towards ideas of procreating big government is so much stigmatized. People cannot, for example, expand the government even if it's necessary, even if more social welfare services are necessary. That kind of thing cannot be done. We see, for example, Tea parties trying to negate this idea of Obamacare. We see, for example, even NAFTA, entering NAFTA is an extremely important issue for the United States. We never see this kind of discourse occurring before election because we think that this over-capitalistic idea is trying to negate all these issues about considering the poor people, the victims of NAFTA, are never ever going to consider. Well, why is this kind of problem is going to be solved? First mechanism we would like to give is because we think that having Communist Party, people who propagate communism explicitly is crucially important because we think that these people will never ever compromise in the first place because these people are getting support from people who cater and who subscribe to communism itself. These people will never, if they compromise to capitalism, they're going to get backlash, they'll never ever be able to lose the support. Therefore, they're going to pursue their own ideology throughout and they're going to be able to counter and criticize the idea of capitalism openly in the first place. And moving on, yes.
Are you aware that communism is not the same as Marxism?
Okay, so yes, we are aware. So that which is the uniqueness of the uniqueness of the communism itself. So what kind of world we are living in the status quo? So we're living in the world we have a lot of problems to solve, like environmental issues or debt crisis occurring in the status quo. And in this kind of context, what is necessary is to cooperate as a nation. That is crucially necessary, right, Mr. Speaker? We have to, for example, bear the austerity measures together so that we can pass down these, we can dissolve all these debts so that we can save the future generation. Or for example, by providing a lot of cutting up, paying more taxation, you're going to provide it for the future generation in terms of environment and so forth. Therefore, in order for us to do this, we need cooperation. And we think that communism is an ideology that is crucially necessary in order for us to facilitate this kind of cooperation in the first place. Because another aspect, and a unique aspect of communism, answer to the POI from Thomas, is to cooperate each other and have an entity as a nation as a whole, having sharing your own burden, paying a lot of taxes so that you can solve the societal problem. That is the uniqueness of the communism itself. But we think that the status quo problem is that because this kind of communist idea is so much stigmatized in the status quo, exactly because of the mechanism that I already explained, it's the people trying to expand this ideology of cooperating with others. People easily refuse because they only think about yourself, or people don't even think that this ideology of cooperation with each other is not a good idea because they always associate it with the past failure of USSR, so forth. But after taking disposal, by having Communist Party or having people who legitimately say this kind of communist idea, we think that that kind of situation can be solved. Because we think that the status quo problem is because there's so much stigma about the communist people. Even if you have communistic idea, these people cannot voice out these kind of things in the status quo because you're going to be called as a betrayal or you're going to be called and stigmatized in the status quo. But these people can collect together and voice out. They can say proudly that now proudly that there's a necessity for us to cooperate or there's a necessity for us to achieve equality in the first place. From this reason, what we have told you today, we told you how first exclusively having communists as an independent ideology is so important. Secondly, we proved to you how having communist idea in the modern world is crucially important. We are the ones who have accepted all the wordings coming from this motion. From this reason, we're issuing
I thank the member of the government. Next, I'd like to call upon the member of the opposition, Thomas Malone, to start the case from closing opposition.
It's strange that Pyrrhus extension was about how we can cooperate
with communists. Given that one, the entire history of the 20th century was about how communist states and capitalist states engaged in a proxy war in which hundreds of thousands lost their lives, in which cooperation was impossible, in which we were on the brink of nuclear annihilation, and furthermore, that the fundamental tenets of communism and Marxism is that capitalism must be destroyed, it is evil, and its end is inevitable. I do not know how cooperation happens under those circumstances and given those histories. But equally bad for the opening is the fact that they didn't understand what communism is. Communism is not Marxism. Communism is not a discourse. Communism is a way of organizing your state where the government controls the means of production and orders what is produced in that state without private property. Marxism is a discourse about labor versus capital. Communism is a way of organizing the state. Furthermore, if they say they don't support the existence of any actual communist states, it seems contradictory given that they regret the decline of communism. So on their side, they have to at least support the existence of some actually existing communist states. They can't just say, we value discourse, we win the debate, right? That's not what the debate is actually about. Now, the thing is that, no, thank you. Furthermore, like, given that communism and Marxism are different, there are other theories, as they admitted, that can provide a critique of capitalism. Like, if communitarianism is premised on ideas of equality, right, and it supports the things they want to support, I do not know why we need communism in that instance, given that these other theories achieve the sort of discourse that they want to protect in these cases, right? They need to defend the existence of communist-style states. They can't just defend the existence of liberal, leftist, or Marxist discourse and hope to win this debate. Furthermore, what we say is capitalism is already capable of self-critique. There are various forms of free market states. For example, Sweden is a social democracy, though like it's still capitalist, with very high progressive tax rates, very high levels of social welfare. Likewise, the United States, which is relatively free market, right? So there are various different kinds of free market entities, right? It's not like unilateral. There's also the different kinds. And the fact that there are different kinds proves that market states can reassess themselves and can change themselves. Furthermore, like the very fact that we can have this debate proves that there is a plurality of discourse within market states. If we were having this debate in Soviet Russia, OP would already all be dead because they would have shot us. Because communism is an ideology which needs to protect its own tenets, and therefore it shuts down discourse around those tenets. The very fact that we can talk about whether or not the market system is good or not proves we can critique the market discipline and change it. Moreover, the fact that current market states are incredibly different than market states 100 or 200 years ago likewise proves the ability of market states to change. Like laissez-faire capitalism in England in the Victorian era no longer exists as a model. Now we have free education, universal healthcare, and these sorts of welfare provisions for the poor. So this all proves that market capitalism is fully capable of revising itself and changing the way it operates within its own citizenry. So we don't know why we need communism in these circumstances, especially given that communism isn't even what they were talking about. Now what I'm going to bring you today is the uniqueness of communism and why it must be banished from the global community. And the reason is very simple, is that communism is an ideology who at its core wants to destroy capitalism, right? It is an antagonistic ideology which leads to conflict, leads to subjugation, and actually leads to worse outcomes for the poor, the very people that they want to protect on their side of the house. What we say is communism is very similar to a religion, right? Very similar to a monotheistic religion, right? That holds its own tenets and wants to destroy the tenets of others, right? So because the core tenet of communism is that capitalism must be destroyed, it has an inherently antagonistic relationship with capitalism in the same way that monotheistic religions have an inherently antagonistic relationship with other sorts of religions. For example, pluralistic religions like Hinduism or Buddhism are relatively less antagonistic than our monotheistic religions because they don't say that other religions are blatantly wrong. But communism does do this. So what happens happens in this case? Well, we get things like the Cold War. We get things like the imminent threat of nuclear annihilation. And given that they need to protect the actual existence of communist states, they can't say they don't want any communist states if they regret the decline of communism. That means that we will have these sorts of antagonistic relationships. We will have these sorts of extremely dangerous, extremely hurtful relationships. And furthermore, because communism must isolate itself from capitalist market countries, it actually means it has worse outcomes for the people living in those countries because they cannot partake of the benefits created by free market countries, right? Free market countries can freely exchange ideas, can freely exchange goods, can freely exchange technologies. But communist states, because they are antagonistic, shut themselves off from this sort of exchange. That's why former communist states had massively lower standards of living compared to free market states. That's when China adopted market systems, the poor in China became massively more wealthy, whereas former communist states had relatively flat growth, and their people could not partake of these benefits. What we see is that by isolating themselves, they doomed themselves to have lower standards of living. Yes, I will take opening.
So as I already told you, as long as people think or believe that possessing something is a natural right for them, that unhappiness or such kind of things still continue. But the communism denies the possession of itself, and we say that is one of the idea which everyone can be happy. Why you can deny these kind of things?
Okay, given that the premise of our societies is capitalist, we don't know what the value is in undermining the very premise of that society. So given that in a capitalist society we will never accept that property rights are invalid, I do not know what the value is of telling us property rights are invalid because we're never going to accept those rights. If you're saying you would prefer us to change to communism and have no property rights, you're having a different debate, Koki. Now, furthermore, what we say is that the outcomes for the poor are actually worse in these cases. Why? Because communism sticks to its ideology at the expense of the poor. It believes in destroying the bourgeoisie. That means they kill the teachers, they kill the doctors, they kill the engineers, they kill the professors, as they did in Burma, as they did in Russia, as they did in China. That leads to things like massive famines, because there is no one who knows how to properly do agricultural technology. That leads to poor educational outcomes. And so all the actors that they want to protect on their side of the house are actually hurt by communism and protected by the free market. What have we shown you today? We've shown you that capitalism is perfectly capable of self-regulating, that they're not talking about capitalism, they're talking about Marxism, that because communism is an intransient ideology which is inherently antagonistic towards capitalism, we get dangerous outcomes, we cannot have the cooperation that the closing want, and we actually get worse outcomes for the poor, worse outcomes for the most vulnerable, and are all those reasons we are very, very proud to oppose. Thank you.
I thank the member of the opposition. Next, I'd like to call upon the government whip, Yasumi Tosuka, to conclude the case of government bench. Here.
Fundamental assumption in the closing opposition is we have to support a model where only communist parties, only communist people exist. It is totally against the model which OG provided in the first place. We talk to you, the status quo paradigm, or the paradigm on their side of the house, is 100% capitalism is dominating the ideas. People have no choices to choose, even though they love the communist ideas. They can't opt into it. They are forced to get accustomed to the idea of capitalism and to feel unnecessary dissatisfaction which was created by the artificial concept of capitalism. No engagement from their side of the house. So, on our side, clearly explain to you why communism is a necessary actor and the independent communist party is essential so that we can galvanize the discourse from the back one-way street to the more diverse aspect. But when we talk to you, we can achieve better modern world where we have to cooperate with together by creating sense or culture of cooperation. So, I'm going to talk about two issues in my speech. First, which can have a better political discourse, no thank you, or representation of individual choices, which is totally neglected by the side of the house. Secondly, which can achieve better modern world nationally and internationally. So, first case, which can have better political discourse and representation. What we heard from the opening opposition, no thank you, was very shallow idea. Already we are succeeding to include those things. So, Mr. Speaker, they are to some extent conceding to our point. If they include those ideas, we think it's fine. The problem is, people have no more incentive to criticize that idea, no thank you, even though we think it's bad. Just the same case as NAFTA or so forth. But secondly, they somehow mention, it makes it difficult for individual to calculate unfair gaps. After taking this policy, suddenly, we can hear any mechanism on this point, how people can't calculate well, no thank you. We not think, or we not say, people are totally hijacked by 100% communism, but also we have another ideas, and as they concede, people are already accustomed to the idea of capitalism. In those instances, we say more ideas, which can be expanded, no thank you, artificially, must be come down into again, so that we can have more diverse choices in the first place. What we heard from opposing government, they said, capitalism makes it difficult for ourselves to make concession. He gave us the idea, no thank you, of the Cold War, it can be so exclusive. The case of Cold War, Mr. Speaker, it's so radical one. Of course, the Russia and the US just use that idea as justifying your own way of dominating the world by moved on capitalistic ideas. We think it's totally against, no thank you, out of this debate in the first place. But the problem is, what we have to do is to criticize as an independent actor those things. We are happy to include some neo-Nazi movement because those movements can spotlight effect where the overreaction or overprotection of Jewish is there, or we are happy to include the politicians who are easily or fully rebut together by having better discourse. We say on their side of the house, no thank you, those effects won't occur. That is a disgrace in the first place. When we talk to you from closing opposition, closing government, all this somehow mentioned, majority supported, it is but damaging, but also people assume poor is responsible. So we talk to you, no thank you, while we clarify what the communism is in the first place. We talk to you, the independence of those communist parties is so important. Why is that so? Firstly, because of that kind of lack of less popularity of those things, people are feeling stigmatized, no thank you, even though they want to use those actions already because of strong antipathy. But secondly, we talk to you, people assume it's good. People tend to assume it's fine and pursue that kind of actions without giving any information from outside the world because it's already labeled as evil. But thirdly, we talk to you, concession or that kind of thing is jeopardizing the ability of individual or society as a whole to proceed to the next step because we are forced to concede, we are forced to make concession with other parties even though, no thank you, there are other ideas. We think it's harmful. In what ways? 3 ways. We talk to you firstly, people's choice to subscribe to one idea can be totally limited because on their side of the house, only capitalistic idea is the one which is absolutely good. On that basis, we say even though people want to subscribe to communitarian ideas, if that choice, no thank you, is totally expunged. Secondly, we talk to you, it is creating artificial dissatisfaction inside that community or inside that country because people have to look for more money, people have to look for more happiness in terms of capitalism. In those cases, most of poor people who can't succeed well, no thank you, because of the lottery of birth, because of by chance, can feel emotional or artificial unnecessary dissatisfaction. As a result, it can lead to more suicide. We say it's damaging. But lastly, we talk to you, it can negate discourse by using the rhetoric of communism, even though it has some good aspects. They say, or they use that ideas by antagonizing it, even though there's some good ideas from politicians like Obamacare or so forth, those things can be easily negated. We think it's bad for discourse, and we have to make it, we mustn't make it happen to create individual and independent actors so that they can criticize each other. We say that arena is already not exist in our society, but we say we have to make it adjusted. Before moving to second case, open.
Was there meaningful discussions in the United States before the decline of communism?
Sorry, I couldn't understand your POI's point. So, second case, which can achieve better modern law nationally and internationally. So, what we heard from opening opposition, it is causing tension, and after this, because of the global trade, people feel fine. We think that's against a situation of reality. Because of the capitalistic idea, its expansion or prevail. People are trying to exclude immigrants. People are trying to exclude poor people. But given all the burden for these people, we say on that kind of cases, just the same cases, US or Europe, you're against those reality. Then they said humanity protection is important. We say those kind of lack of communism is an obstacle for society to proceed to reallocate young resources to those people. We say it's bad. What we heard from closing opposition is communism is destroying individual at the expense of the poor. We think that kind of thing won't occur on our real society now because we already have law protection, we already have media, we already have any check and balance system. The problem is there's no such discourse, there's no such views on our society. We think that's bad. So what we talk to you from closing government, OG somehow mentioned balancing out is important. We talk to you specifying context what is happening in the modern world. We are seeing lots of problems, environment, debt crisis, humanitarian aid. In that kind of cases, what we have to do is not based on the capitalistic idea and justify the disparity or discrimination for these people, but rather to be more inclusive towards those people, to be more happy to reallocate your money to as a humanitarian protection or protection of the poor. We say their policy makes it difficult for these people to notice the importance of having communistic ideas. They are just entrench certain people in that capitalistic idea. That's why we propose this motion.
I thank the government way. Next, I'd like to call upon the opposition with Mitsushi Ono to summarize the case to complete this round. Here, here.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, today's government side don't really regret the decline of popularity of communist ideology speaker. Because in order for someone to regulate, they have to defend the actually existed communist system or countries in the history to begin with. Otherwise, you cannot regulate anything. This debate is not just about balanced discourse. More than that, they misunderstand the nature of communists to begin with. To that extent, we are happy to support the war with the capitalism, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to talk about two things, message. First of all, what's the way in which we understand the inherent nature of communists and the discourse within that context? How does it really work? Second thing is the consequences of those ideologies, which can maximize the overall utility for the vulnerable. Because both sides obviously try to address the problem related to the vulnerable and the weak people, still which is better at the end of the day. First of all, they misunderstand what the communist is. It's not just about the property rights as an inalienable rights for society or something. The core tenet of communism is extremely destructive because it tried to aim complete destruction of capitalism. It is uncompromising force in the political system. Mr. Speaker, they mischaracterize the communism is not a moderate opposition as they talk about. It's not a moderate, achievable, or negotiable political ideology that exists in the political system. To begin with, Mr. Speaker, it's same as the vision as my partner talked about. As long as its goal is total annihilation, there's no room for whatsoever for us to reach the consensus or get concessions to begin with. It's surprising that the government supported neo-Nazi. We are happy to oppose that because fundamental tenet of that particular ideology is to complete annihilation of Jewish people in exactly the same way. When the fundamental core tenet of some ideology is total annihilation of the other side, we don't see any possibility for negotiation to function to begin with. No, thank you, Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen. They also talked about a very valid point about balanced discourse necessary in order for because both ideologies are imperfect, we need to have a dialogue and discourse in order for society to reach consensus or examine which is really better, isn't it, right? No, thank you, no, thank you. the premise of that side of the house is capitalism is monolithic. It doesn't revise itself. No, Mr. Speaker, there are spectrum within the capitalism idea. If we talk about a communitarian idea, it self-regulates communism itself. It self-overcomes the inherent problem of capitalism within itself, Mr. Speaker. We don't necessarily have to have communism or as a countervailing view in order to overcome the problem of capitalism in today's world. No, thank you. But more than that, Mr. Speaker, as I said before, this is uncompromising force, which means that that kind of existence of uncompromising force exacerbates further fragmentation, which is the opposite from cooperation as they talk about. We don't believe in the realistic sense the cooperation that they talk about will be achievable with the existence of a destructive ideology to begin with. No, thank you. More than that, the inherent contradiction of that side of the house is they are not willing to support communist parties or total communist party. But in order for the Peter Chan's arguments about environmental solution or austerity to be implemented, they have to support the Communist Party, which has a power or actual authority to legislate laws to begin with. If that's the context of this debate, I don't think reachable or negotiable consensus is going to be achieved. And on your side, I will take you. Good one.
As you illustrate, the capitalism has a diverse spectrum, and also the communism has a diverse spectrum.
Okay.
But from the opening government already told you how the idea of the principle that give up their property right is sometimes necessary, and why you can deny this idea at the first place.
Okay. Whatever the position of communists is, it collectively aim to destroy the capitalism. That's the difference, or a particular discrepancy between capitalism and communism, ladies and gentlemen. What you talked about the inalienable rights of property is about Marxism, because it supports nationalization of means of production, which is different from communism to begin with. No, thank you. Moving on to the final arguments about the poverty, Mr. Speaker. The opening government and closing government describe a capitalist government as if they extremely abandon or ignore the poor people. No, we don't believe so. Capitalist government, we are not willing to defend unfettered capitalism or completely unregulated capitalism to begin with. Even capitalist government have a capability to provide a rudimentary level of welfare to the people. More than that, we believe if there's a limit on what government can do, there comes our extension. That's why we need maximize market mechanism and social function which maximize the overall utility, so that redistribution of welfare really function or substantially function. We don't believe they can do everything. There's always limit on the capability of the state. To that extent, it's a social system or economic system that cover is so necessary. To that extent, we are happy to support capitalism. Why is that? Because as closing government explicitly stated, the ideology of communism as an independent existence is necessary. In order for communism to defend its independency, they fundamentally try to separate themselves and freeze the free transaction from other countries, from other markets. That's how how they are structurally incapable of maximizing overall social and economic utility because of the free transaction between the countries, Mr. Speaker. Let's take a look at the example my partner gave you. The uncompromising force which challenges the dominant idea creates a forced dichotomy, just like the Cold War, or the radical, binary polarization between capitalism and the communism, ladies and gentlemen. Because of that, Mr. Chairman, the hundreds of thousands of poor people were structurally suffering from that. And more than that, because the most capable member of society are totally annihilated because of the existence of strong communists in the past. How does it maximize the utility for the poor people? Well, we contend on this side of the house that doctrine of communists exists for the sake of doctrine, because purity or pure achievement of doctrine overrides its implementation. That's the inherent problem, Mr. Speaker. What's the meaning of having doctrine that exists for the sake of doctrine itself, which overrides the consequence of its implementation? It's nothing. There's no point of having for human society to have that sort of doctrine, Mr. Speaker. To that extent, we are happy to oppose the motion. Thank you.
The time to the opposition way. Now the speech is over. Thank you for your cooperation.